guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a comparison video, and I've got two really interesting knives. There's some significant differences that I think will be worth discussing here. The two knives that I want to look at are the steel will Barghest and the Kizer Justice. Both of these cost about the same amount. They're within a few dollars of each other. Both of these are kind of designed with the same philosophy in mind. These are pretty, tactical looking modern flippers. Both of them have the same deployment options, similar construction, similar price point. So I want to put these two side by side. There is obviously one significant difference that you're seeing right now, and that is the size. So we'll touch on that really quickly. So for start off, the Barghest is 9.5 inches overall, 4 inches on the blade, just a hair under, 5.5 inches on the handle, 4 3/8 grip area. So almost, so more than 4 inches, which is pretty impressive. And it's going to weigh in at 8.5 ounces. It's a hefty knife. The Justice, on the other hand, is not a slouch. In fact, the Justice is a fairly large knife unless you put it beside the Barghest. It's 8 3/4 inches overall, 3 3/4 inches on the blade, so it's only less than 1/4 of an inch shorter. 8 15/16 on the handle. I mean 4 15/16, not 8 but 4, so just about a 5-inch handle basically, and 3 7/8, so just a hair under 4 inches of grip area. So both give lots of real estate. Both are large, sort of tactical-ish, modern, heavier use folders for sure. Oh, by the way, the Justice weighs at 5 ounces. So considerably lighter. Now, let me say this in terms of, carry on a daily basis. Yeah, the Justice is definitely in the lead here. However, it needs to be pointed out that steel will, right, they weren't designing or they weren't aiming at a light, easy to carry, knife that didn't take up much room in your pocket. That was not their goal. Kizer's definitely shooting at a broader audience, and the size makes sense based on that. The Barghest, though, is really for someone who wants something big and beefy and oversized and insane, and it delivers that. Now, by the way, a more appropriate comparison would be the next size down on the Barghest, and that would be a totally different video, let me tell you. That would really shake this up, and I'll try to consider that from time to time as we go along. For now, let me just say, if you're looking for something big and hand filling and crazy, then yeah, the Barghest is definitely your go-to. Something a little more carryable, you're going to be looking to the Kizer. All right. This is a little bit of an unfair comparison because, again, the Barghest didn't intend to be a smaller carryable folder, at least a regular EDC folder. The small Barghest would be very similar, and honestly, the small would, oh man, I don't think you could really pick, other than based on subjective things like how they look or what blade design you like better. They would be too close to call. Okay, let's go ahead and look at the blade. We have on the Barghest, we have a black wash one here. It's also available in satin. This is going to be D2. The Justice is satin. I believe you can get one that's tan with a black blade as well. It's going to be N690. So we've got D2, N690, satin finish, black wash or satin. Different color scheme if you want the Kizer with a black blade. Both of these are very large, substantial blades. I really like the distal taper on the Kizer. I've got to say the Barghest is quite impressive here. If you watch my full review of this knife, you'll know that I just could not get over, how this knife, which is very thick, fairly bulky, and yet it still cuts really well. You can see the Kizer is considerably thinner blade stock, okay, a thinner blade in general, and yet when you use these two side by side, they're very similar in terms of actual cutting performance, and that's largely because this is a very high grind here. This is nice and thin behind the edge. They're both actually nice and thin behind the edge. The Justice is a little bit better. All right, just a little. The other thing to consider here in terms of cutting performance is that the Justice, the thumb stud, is a little more out in the way of the cutting edge if you're cutting right here, let's say, than the Barghest. Neither one is perfect on that front either. All right, so what would I say about this? Performance wise, you know, if you want something that's going to be a little tougher and more durable, by the way, edge retention N690 versus D2, the D2 is generally going to perform a little bit better. Now that's obviously subject to heat treat, but a well-treat heated D2 is going to perform a little better than N690. N690, of course, is going to be stainless where the D2 is not. So in terms of side-by-side use of these two, I have to tell you, it is way closer than I thought, right? My initial instinct was, yeah, the Kizer is going to be so much slicier. It's going to just blow the Barghest out of the water, but it really doesn't. It is marginally better, but not a lot. Now, where I think it does win some extra points for me is in the design. I find this just a little bit more attractive than the Barghest, although partially that's because I'm biased towards satin. I really like satin blades. So how do those blades stack up? The Barghest is going to be a little tougher, not quite as slicey. The Justice is going to be obviously more stainless, a little thinner, slice a little bit better, but sacrifice some of that toughness. All right. In terms of which one I would pick, this is a tough call, guys. Let's say this. For general EDC tasks, I'd probably lean toward the Kizer, but I'm a little more impressed by the Barghest because it takes this massive blade and makes it cut well, which is really cool. Okay, I expect blade stock that's this thin with a fairly, with a moderate flat grind to cut pretty well. So the Kizer, no surprises. The Barghest, definitely some surprises. Let's move on to the action. Here is where we're going to have a little bit more of a discussion because, well, these are very similar. We've got two liner locks with flippers and thumb studs. Both, by the way, very enjoyable, both very satisfying actions. Now, the Kizer is going to drop shut a little bit better because of the bearings. The Barghest, I can shake it down and I can get it to drop shut, but it's not quite as smooth. However, the significant difference here is washers versus bearings. Now, the conventional wisdom on this, and there's some legitimacy to this for sure, is that washers in a hard use knife make more sense. And I still believe that. I will say that I've backed off a little bit on my insistence that a hard use knife must have washers, because the fact is, any folder, if you put it in a bunch of grit and dirt and crap, is going to have a hard time with that. Now, where the washers kind of shine, or where they're maybe a little bit more impressive, is the fact that I can loosen this pivot off and there's no nooks and crannies and stuff. I can kind of spray some water through here. I can put some KPL through here, forced air, whatever the case may be, and get it pretty well cleaned out without taking the knife fully apart. The bearings are going to be a little tougher, right? I'm going to have to probably take this knife fully apart and clean everything to get it back to the way I want it. Now, you can, and I often have, just loosened a knife off, sprayed it out with, or blown it out with some forced air, give it some KPL, blow it out a couple of times, and that will eventually work. And if you really need to do more, you could just soak this with WD-40 and clean it that way. Just keep in mind, WD-40 is a cleaner, and it's not lubricant, right? So you can get the gunk and dirt out of there and get it moving well again with WD-40, but you're going to have some subsequent steps after that to properly lubricate it and get it functioning the way you want it to again. In fact, WD-40 can also leave a bit of a film behind. So just be aware you've got further steps if you use WD-40 to clean your knife out. Not that it's wrong, you just have to know there's other stuff that's got to go on then. So after all of that discussion, which would I rather have? Well, I still love the simplicity of washers, and I love that Steel Will has done such a great job of getting this to perform as well as it does. The action on this is very nice. And to get a flipper that deploys really well on washers, they deserve a lot of credit for that. The Kizer is a little nicer. It deploys a little faster. The detent, I would say, is just a hair better on the Kizer. By the way, both work really well using either the flipper or the thumb studs. So which one wins? Well, if you want something that's going to be a little more enjoyable to fidget with, the Kizer probably wins, but not by a lot. If you want something that maybe is a little simpler and a little more hardy, you're going to be leaning toward the Barghest. And again, this would be true either of this one or the next size down, which would probably make another really close comparison. Finally, let's get to the handles. Both of these are pretty comfortable. If you have a lot of work to do, I would probably lean toward the Barghest because of the size. So something this big is so hand-filling that you can do a lot without getting a whole lot of fatigue. The Kizer is very comfortable, very grippy. Construction on these is, for all intents and purposes, the same, right? Both of them are G10, both of them are textured. They've got some extra milling, backspacer on both, some internal milling on both to save weight. Like it's so close, and even the ergonomics are not that different. The two standout features here is the Barghest does a nice job with those flush screws. We've got the panhead screws on the Kizer, which are not my favorite. They aren't a problem. I've actually carried this knife quite a bit, and I do enjoy it. And finally, the Kizer has a glass breaker. Again, if you're going to break glass with your knife, make sure, if this screen that you're looking at, okay, is a window, you want to be hitting like down here. You want to hit the window in a corner. Don't hit it up here, especially in a car that's like a roll-up window. Don't hit it up here where there's some give and some movement. Get it right down here at the most solid spot so that it'll be more likely to break. And hopefully you never have to do that, but take it from somebody who's broken a lot of car windows in training. That's how you want to do it. So back to our comparison here. To me, the glass breaker is not really a thing in terms of making one better than the other, but if you need that, obviously it is. Ergonomically, they're very close. The Barghest is just a little bit better. Design-wise, in terms of overall attractiveness, that's the last point here, and I find the Kizer just a little prettier than the Barghest, but that's really in the eye of the beholder. So overall, most people are going to take the Kizer because of its size. I get that. I think probably a number of people are like me. They're not really strongly in favor of either washers or bearings. I get some people, some people comment on a video that say like every knife should have washers. I guess every knife has bearings, but whether they're phosphor bronze washers or whether they're, ball bearings, that's the difference. Some people are strong advocates for one or the other. I'm really not. As long as the knife opens when I want it to and closes when I want it to, that's all I'm looking for. The bigger difference is the Barghest is a little heavier built. It's going to be just a little tougher, a little more durable, not a lot. And if you're using it as a folding knife anyway, then that takes away some of that. But that would be the primary consideration for me, especially for a knife this size. If I want just a beast of a knife, a tank of a knife, this is what I'm going with. If I want something that can be pretty capable but is a little easier to carry, then I'm going to be leaning toward the Kizer. And if you force me to just keep one as my EDC, yeah, I'm going the Kizer because I've got to carry it around all the time. If, like myself, you have a whole collection of knives and you've got some options, then the Barghest becomes more appealing because it can be a great occasional carry. When I want something big and ridiculous, I can have it, and then on other days I can carry a PM2 or a Manix or a Griptilian or whatever else out of my collection I want to carry. All right, guys, thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to check out those channel sponsors down below. That's a huge help to the channel, and I mean, you get to save a little bit of money as well. So White Mountain Knives, Southern Edge Knife Works, great. Thanks a lot, guys, for continued support, and thank you for going and checking them out. We'll talk to you soon.